Hi and welcome back. I'm Jake Schoenberger.
And I'm Greg Weinberger with RE/MAX Results in the Minnesota Home Realty Group. Thanks again for joining us on this, the second of 3 parts on Home Buying 101.
So as you may remember, we left off on our first series of scheduling showings, getting out there, looking at properties that you guys wanted to take a look at, coming across a property that you fell in love with, and now you wanted to pursue it as, sitting down, writing the sellers an offer, and moving to that next step. So the next on our list would be writing an offer. So what we would do is go back to the office. We would gather all of the documentation needed to write the offer. Part of that documentation would include, again, the pre-approval letter, which we stressed very heavily about making sure that we have that in our file prior to looking for properties. And then again, we do need it when we send off an offer to the listing agent. So writing an offer, there's a lot of pieces to this whole thing. Like Greg said in our last video, we could probably spend, an hour video with that just in writing an offer. So we do use the current Minnesota Realtors purchase agreements. This is something that we follow to a T, making sure everything is 100% correct, all the I's dotted and T's crossed with this thing. And then we also take it one step further, and like Greg mentioned as well in the last video, is doing what's called a CMA, or a market analysis, making sure that the property that you're writing an offer on is priced correctly. And then we'll also sit back down with you prior to doing that, and again, going over the market conditions, where things are at. Is it a hot market, a slow market? Could we maybe ask for closing costs from the seller? This, that, and the other thing, and then going over absolutely everything line by line, making sure that you're comfortable with it, and moving on to the next step. So.
Absolutely. Perfect. So the next step actually is about the financials, and we really want you to be well prepared. There's some interesting nuances about real estate when you do purchase it. And the first step that you're going to need to take, financially speaking, when you enter into a purchase agreement is to deposit earnest money. Okay? Earnest money is a good faith down payment. Essentially, it can be anything from $500 on up to thousands and thousands of dollars. Some of this might be a little bit psychological to the seller in terms of your cash position or your willingness to put a large sum of money down. It shows motivation towards purchasing that home. But we'll counsel you on the appropriate amount for earnest money. But just so you know, besides your down payment that you'll need from actually purchasing the home, and the lender will give you that information, earnest money is actually cashed, and it will sit in a trust account for the seller's or the listing company's trust account. Okay, so just so you're aware, you need to be prepared. We highlight that in green in our buyer's book here, along with some other information about the financial aspect of moving forward in the transaction. So after the earnest money deposit is completed, the next step is acceptance of the contract, and Jake will talk you through that.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is, once we get done writing the purchase agreement, we will package everything up and we will deliver it to the listing agent. They will then get in touch with their sellers. They will go over the offer with them to see if it's acceptable to them. And then at that point in time, there could be a lot of negotiations depending on where they're at. I mean, there could be no negotiations. Depending on how the sellers feel about your offer. And really, negotiations could be anything from they want more money, they don't maybe want to pay closing costs if we wrote those in. Probably the most thing that's changed is the closing date.
Absolutely.
So that's something that we got to figure out, making sure that our closing date will work with the seller's closing date. Coupled with just financing, making sure that, again, listing agent will probably call the lender that you chose to work with to make sure that your financing is good. Again, just we fall back on that a lot, because obviously if you can't finance the home, you can't buy the home.
That's right.
We really like to focus in on that. So once that is accepted and everything's negotiated out, everybody signs it on the seller side, and then it comes back to us. In our purchase agreement, we have many contingencies. What's a contingency? Contingency is, even though something is accepted, we still have a contingency of inspection, contingency of appraisal, contingency of you actually financing the property 100%. So the next thing will be on the list to do on our time frame is inspection. So we highly recommend doing that. And it's just a very key piece in today's market to make sure that the home is tip-top, and we'll have Greg talk to you about that.
Yeah, inspections is next, and inspections you're going to get a full report once the inspection has actually been conducted. We do have great inspectors that we work with, so if you need a referral on that, we're here to help you through that process. You can do everything from just a plain visual inspection, which generally takes, Jake, about 2 to 3 hours time frame.
About that, yeah.
You can do a radon inspection, you can do mold testing, you can do moisture testing if it's a stucco property, for example. We're really experienced in dealing with all types of properties and all types of issues that come out of these inspections. Normally you have about 8 to 10 days, generally speaking, with regard to the way the contract is structured to conduct all those inspections. And we'll have a chance to review the inspection report, and then we'll decide what, if anything, we want to negotiate back with the seller on. So that's a whole nother set of negotiations, as Jake alluded to. This is sort of negotiations, and this is a big step. A little stressful for the seller, a little stressful for the buyer, but we're here to navigate those, bumpy waters for you to get through the inspection process.
Yeah, and we highlight in green a few things, like Greg said, in regards to the earnest money. Again, that is a check that is cashed. It's your money that, again, does set in the seller's broker account. So at the end of the day, the numbers at the end, that is a credit to you. And then also with inspections, typically a third-party person comes in to do the inspections. As Greg mentioned, we have a lot of good inspectors. It depends on what you all want to do. Like Greg said, there's lots of mold tests and things like that you can get done. But typically it's anywhere from about $400 to $600 to do a home inspection, and that's something to where that's non-refundable money. So if you get into the property, they find a whole bunch of issues or just something that you can't live with, can't be negotiated with a seller, that money is non-refundable. And again, then you can sign a cancellation to get out of your purchase agreement.
Absolutely.
So,
thanks, Jake.
Yep. Absolutely. So the next is mortgage application. We'll send all the documentation to the lender of your choice or that you chose. They then will take everything, kind of package it up, do everything that they need to do behind the scenes, and kind of the next step is they'll check the credit report, make sure that your credit is still good. Don't go out and purchase a new car or anything from home furniture or anything like that. Anticipation of you getting a new property. We've seen some devastating things where people went and racked up some credit cards and it didn't go well for them. So be very careful on that.
Okay, yeah, and next is appraisal, where essentially this is where the lender that you're working with is going to go out and make sure that the price that we negotiated for you is the correct value that the bank associates with the home that you're purchasing. There's a lot of information that goes into that appraisal, but it's basically like the CMA or the market analysis that Jake alluded to in terms of where we thought the real value would be on that home. So if we're doing a good job for you, which I know we will, that appraisal should match up pretty closely with what we said the value was going to be. There are some variations to that. We can again walk you through that in case we do have some appraisal challenges. We do have a lot of experience working through those situations. So once the appraisal process has been completed, then you'll be working really closely with your lender at this point. They take you through what's called underwriting, and then there's underwriting conditions. Essentially, that just means that if there was any missing paperwork, if there were some issues with the home that needed to be addressed, that all that stuff gets taken care of well in advance of our actual close date. But there are some sort of red flags that I'll have Jake cover with regard to just making sure that we don't have any bumps in the road between the time that the conditions are removed and the time that we close. And we call them reasons for rejection. So we want to make sure to avoid those as much as possible.
So one thing, late payments. If you got a car payment, if you have a truck or motorcycle payment, really any payments, you got to keep those up. It's a lot of the lenders will do 2 weeks prior to closing, they'll repull the credit to make sure that you're still in good standings with everybody. And if they show a late payment, that is not good at all. Some of the other things that we talked about was major purchases like a car, home, going home, buying a whole bunch of new furniture for your new property. I've personally experienced that where someone did that. They racked up 2 credit cards and it threw their debt to income ratio out, and they were no longer able to purchase a home. And literally it was 3 hours before closing. So that was devastating.
Not good.
And then change of jobs. A lot of people are like, hey, once I purchase a home, I'm going to change jobs. We highly recommend just staying at that job no matter how bad you may not like it there. Stay there until after the closing. A lot of times the lender will do verification of employment, making sure that you're still at the same job, still making the same pay that you were when you applied for the loan application. So stay at your job. Don't be changing jobs or anything like that.
Right.
They want to make sure that there's a good job history there. And then kind of obvious is significant price drop to your credit score. Right. So again, if you do miss payments or something like that and your credit score goes down below qualifying credit of whatever loan program you were qualified for, if it drops below that, you're going to get kicked out, and it's going to be reason for denial on moving forward with your loan. So we touch base with you on that probably every 2 weeks, just to make sure that no big purchases or anything like that's been going on. And again, wait till after the closing. Go buy the Ferrari if you want to.
Go crazy.
At the end of closing, we don't care, but just wait till it's actually closed, and then it's your property.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us on this series. We're going to wrap it up with the last of the 3 parts of Home Buying 101, where we're going to take you through loan approval all the way to the close. So hope to see you then.
Thank you.